It now gives me great pleasure to ask Dr. Currie to say a few words.
Well, this is an incredible day for me. About 10 years ago, I stood in this auditorium actually and gave a talk on tyrannosaur dinosaurs and the things we've learned about dinosaurs in recent years. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about my influences and how I ended up here today. We all know that we become the people we are because of a product of our genetic history and our influences, the influences of our friends, colleagues, families, and loved ones. But there are little things in life that affect you in very big ways, and when you look back on them, you realize that you wouldn't be the person you are without those tiny little things that seem so insignificant to other people. For me, for example, there were 3 major influences that led to me being a dinosaur paleontologist. When I was 6 years old, I opened up a box of cereal, Rice Krispies, and that box of cereal had a dinosaur in it. And as strange as it sounds, that dinosaur just was the beginning of my journey. I learned a lot about dinosaurs as a kid, and I loved them, but the second influence was when I was 11 years old, and I stepped on a nail and had to stay in class during recess and lunch periods, and so I went through the library at the back of the room, and there was a book by Roy Chapman Andrews. And Andrews was a person who led the expeditions to the Gobi Desert back in the 1920s. And the book was called All About Dinosaurs. And it wasn't just about dinosaurs, though. It was about being a paleontologist. And when I read that book, I realized right away that this was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So 11 years old, I already knew I wanted to be a dinosaur paleontologist. I was lucky in that I lived outside of Toronto and could go to the Royal Ontario Museum all the time when I was a kid. And that reinforced my interest in dinosaurs, but I also realized from looking at the labels that those dinosaurs all came from Alberta. And by the time I was 12, I decided I was going to be a dinosaur paleontologist in Alberta. Now, this is pretty strange. And I didn't realize this until I had my own kids who are here, that most people don't make up their minds at that age about what they want to do. And I guess I must have been a very stubborn individual. I'm not sure what influenced the fact that I kept that goal in mind. But I didn't really think that I would become a dinosaur paleontologist for a long time. At the time, there were only 6 positions in the entire world where people were employed to do research on dinosaurs. And with only 6 positions in the world, and 2 of them occupied by Canadians who were young people and not about to give up their jobs to some young new student coming ahead, I still decided that I wanted to pursue my passion, and I did that. And I figured I would be teaching biology in a junior college or maybe working at the Royal Ontario Museum as a floor sweeper, who knows. But I decided that I wanted to push it as far as I could, and eventually I hoped that I would get into the field. As luck would have it, though, interest in dinosaurs was on the upswing. It had been a field that was dead for a long time because of the fact that during the First World War and the Great Depression, research on dinosaurs had been suppressed by the lack of money. And that didn't recover until the 1970s. But of course, I was growing up in the 70s. And at that time, the Provincial Museum of Alberta decided they wanted a person to work on dinosaurs. And so even before I got my doctorate, I competed with people who were much more qualified than me, but they weren't interested in working on dinosaurs, and I was very passionate about it. And I ended up getting my first job in Edmonton and collected my first dinosaurs, and I've never looked back since. What a lot of people don't realize is that we know relatively little about dinosaurs. It's a field that's rapidly expanding even now, and that as time goes on and people worry about their careers, Yeah, that's important for sure, but it's also important just to follow your passion. Whether it's a field like dinosaur paleontology, which has become, like all the sciences, multidisciplinary and multinational, or any other study, we can expect to see growth simply because the population of the world is growing and our understanding of sciences is growing. When I look back on my influences, though, I realize that a box of cereal may not be very much. A book by Roy Chapman Andrews that was meant for the public certainly had a bigger influence in terms of making my decision. But you always have to show the way to the younger generation on how you got to where you did and what's capable for them to follow through with. And that's why I'm very happy that I was able to return to the University of Alberta as a professor and have students of my own. Thank you very much.